Hi, this is my EPQ presentation, and this is on the American Dream, to what extent the American Dream was an economic reality between the 2007-8 financial crisis and 2020. So this is one of my inspirations. 2016, of course, Donald Trump was elected president, and the first thing he said in his campaign was that sadly the American Dream is dead. And I thought that really shocked me, because I thought American Dream is synonymous with America and the capitalist system. So maybe really think about it, and really interested to explore that. So that was one reason for choosing the project. There are many reasons for choosing this project. This is a picture I took 2 years ago when I was in Washington of the Capitol building. And when I went there, I got a really good insight into American politics and the American economic system as well. Learning more about capitalism, for example, which is in its rawest form in America. So I thought that America is such an interesting place to look at because it is such a raw economic philosophy of capitalism. And the American Dream is deeply rooted within that. So I thought it would be a really good exploration because I plan to do economics at university, and in the future I'd like to have a job in business or in politics. So anything like that will really help me with my future job ambitions. Also, I might want to live in America when I'm older, so to understand the economic system better would help me. And also to just get to know the effects of the 2007-8 financial crisis a little bit better, because it's such an important part of economics. Yeah, and I also read a book on it about American politics, and it really made me keen to see how capitalism was in America, because in a lot of cases in America, the political system is decided by the economic system. So I thought it was really interesting to see the connections between the two. So when I was planning, one thing that did change my project a lot was the lockdown, of course, because originally I was spacing it out for a long period of time, my timeline, but then once the lockdown hit in, it turns out I did a lot of the work in that April and May. However, I did spend a lot of time deciding on a question. I went through loads of different questions. It was partly because I changed what I was thinking. I changed my university course because I was originally going to go for PPE. Then I went for pure economics, so I wanted to shift my orientation towards economics. But once I really saw something I was really interested in, I sort of thought about the American Dream and I decided on it, I really enjoyed it once I got into it. And when I finally decided on it, I first thought about defining it. Because the American Dream is a massive concept, and it has both modern and traditional definitions. So the first thing that I looked for was the traditional definition, which was the Epic of America. This was when it was first coined in 1931, and it talks about the values of social mobility, and online research maybe look at academic studies of recent times, when, for example, banks have made studies about what the American Dream means to people today. So that was really helpful. And then I went on to research potential sections. This is just an example, just to show how much time I spent on deciding my question. I looked at such an array of different questions and things like that. I'm not going to go through everything, it's just to show you how much work I put into the question, but in the end I was pleased with it because it was something I was interested in most and meant the most to me. So this is another thing I did. Mind maps were really important for me in trying to get my ideas and to understand where I am in each part of the project. And defining this really helped me because it gave me strands of different arguments and meant I could always refer back to this. And that meant in research, my research was a lot sharper and I kept focused on the question. So when I was researching, one of the key things that I did first, which I found due to the nature of my project, is the importance of reliability. Because a lot of it was academic journals, but at the same time, the links to the academic journals and the opinions often came through news sources. And as we all know, news sources are incredibly polarised, and there's a massive array of liberal and conservative news sources. So I had to be very careful about how they balance them, and I used this to try and keep balance. So for example, I used the academic journals the most. They were the basis of my argument. The news companies were important for subjective views, as were polling companies. American polling companies such as Pew Research Center was really important, and global organisations as well, such as World Happiness Report, and things that are compiled by the UN, because it shows America's economic performance compared to the rest of the world. And that was really important to understanding how well the American is a dream compared to other nations. So yeah, one of the main things I did once I had all my resources was make sure it was all linked, so I kept focused on the question and it flowed well. But I did end up changing the sections. I realised as I continued to research that I wanted to focus more on economic welfare, overall economic welfare, not just traditional economic welfare, which is living standards and GDP and just that. I decided to focus more on things like happiness, and hence why the World Happiness Report became incredibly important. Responding to current affairs was another thing I did. For example, when there was lots of racial injustice in America and lots of it in the news, I did a lot of research on that, and it really enriched my arguments. I used information for economic studies, and I did have help from my tutor. Mr. Usher was very helpful with me because he made me sort of think about the importance of millennials in it, because previously I didn't realise how much millennial content I had, and it made me really think about how I communicated the plight of the millennials in my essay. So I'm not going to go through everything on this, I'm just going to talk about the key findings. So one of the main things I looked at was social mobility, because social mobility is a key aspect of the American dream. It's the idea that no matter what birth position you're in or your income position when you were born, you can all become rich. However, as you can see, there is a massive disparity between the spending in education for ethnic minorities and white Americans, and that I think is one of the biggest balks to the American dream. And even though there has been an expansion in employment since the financial crisis, unfortunately there has been a big decline in full-time employment, which has affected things such as healthcare costs, and overall has led to difficulties in employment because people aren't able to pay healthcare, and also part-time employment has the effect that when people aren't in full-time employment, generally social, physical and mental welfare decreases. Another key thing I looked at was the link between retirement, home ownership and college debt. College debt is a massive issue, like in the UK, in America, because with college debt it leads to knock-on effects. For example, if there's a higher college debt, then people are more likely to delay their marriage and home ownership. And that means that parents, because young adults are more likely to live with their parents, have to delay retirement. Another key aspect that I looked at was happiness. And America is 19th in the World Happiness Report, and it actually has 2 dedicated chapters in the World Happiness Report about America's problem with demerit goods. And that really made me think about the excess of consumerism in America. I mean, it's something that many Western societies are all guilty of, but it's severely restricting the idea of the American dream that the capitalism delivers full economic welfare to all Americans, because things such as drugs and environmental issues are causing problems. So these are the main strengths that I found that I felt I was good at. I got a good grasp of how to answer the question because my planning was very thorough. The thoroughness of my planning really gave me a good framework for my question, and that meant my question was a lot sharper. My research was very extensive. I was fortunate in the fact that my topic has a lot of current affairs, very much current affairs, and that meant there was a lot of academic journals about it, and lots of news articles, and that gave me some really good links to some really interesting articles. Being self-critical drafts, this is a massively important thing for university, because as we transition into university, we need to be more critical of ourselves and no one's faults. And I felt like I did that quite well. I was quite brutal with myself, knowing that I really wanted to get those top grades. Coming to a judgment on the evidence available. This is very difficult when it's such a massive topic, because what I realised when I started to write it, there were so many strands I could write about, and there was some stuff that I had to leave out. For example, I couldn't really talk as much as I wanted about the environment and the effects that it will have on the American dream in the future. And that meant that I had to be selective. And that was really good because it will allow me in the future to be more focused on the question at university. Adapting my structure, as I said, I had to adapt my structure earlier to accommodate my findings. And I took advantage of the time afforded by lockdown well, even though I did take a lot of time deciding my question. It was really good because then it gave me a lot of time to really evaluate it evaluate my essay once I finished it. So weaknesses, I spent far too long trying to get the right question. I overthought it really, and the key thing is that I didn't really think of the stuff I truly enjoyed. And when I started to think about the stuff that really made me interested in economics, I enjoyed it more and I felt like I wrote a lot better. Getting the essay to the right word count was difficult, as well as choosing between different argument strands, as I said. But this is a really important skill for university. And some of the skills I thought of is when you're editing and going through and looking at like how to change words to make and to use one word instead of three. That's really helpful little tips which will be crucial in the future. Another thing that was frustrating was the essay did sound a little bit one-sided. That's only because that was the evidence that I found. That's the evidence that was presented to me. And maybe in the future, when I'm looking for a question, maybe I should think more about how balanced this essay will be, because I did find that it was quite damning of the American dream, the evidence I found. Often had to use useful evidence, and once again, unreliability with this topic was an issue, but I felt like I vetted it well. So the value of this project, the skills necessary to find useful information in academic journals. Academic journals will be key for my university study because I had to look into them for information, and when I was looking through them I started to get a few little tips on how to do it. For example, looking for summaries within academic journals and looking for key quotes by authors, because that really enriches the more statistical evidence with subjective views. Learning to Oxford reference was really helpful. I did it so many times that I feel really confident with it now, and that will just save me time at university, especially at the start. Being careful with bias, the project itself made me really consider of where I got my sources from, and that would be crucial at university when there's a lot of scrutiny and the sources have to be of very high value. The importance of studying something I'm truly interested in, and also methods to reduce time spent searching. So for example, using Google Scholar was really important for me, because that really got me straight to the academic journals. And also things such as the Control F key, looking for keywords, that was really helpful. And the value of not rushing into writing an essay section without researching the whole essay first. I did a couple, in my former questions, I did a couple of drafts and little paragraphs, and then I realised that this was way too big, and I'd wasted my time on doing this research, so that's why my eventual question had so much extensive planning. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions?
That's brilliant, well done, well done.
To answer your question. Okay, so you were saying about the World Happiness Report, and do you think this idea of the American dream and like a capitalist society does increase the happiness of people throughout the country?
Yeah, this is one of the most interesting parts of economics, and something that I really found interesting in here. Many economists believe that this idea of happiness doesn't just increase with wealth. There's a point when happiness and wealth kind of level off, because once you get to a certain point of wealth, all your basic needs are being met, and at that point, just getting a new TV and replacing an old TV with a new TV doesn't actually give you that much utility. So one of the issues that I found with the American dream, and is endemic in many Western societies, is that often we're all guilty of this. We think that getting more money or getting more stuff will make us happier, but there's actually a limit to that. And at that point, we have to think more about spiritual values and social quality of life.
That's a good answer. I'll just ask one more quickly.
Sure.
The first slide at the beginning, where you had the quote from Donald Trump in 2016, the American dream is dead. After having done your research and done this project, how much do you agree or disagree with that statement he made back then?
I feel it might be a little bit hyperbolic, but there is definitely truth in it, and the fact that he got so many votes suggests that many Americans think there's a lot of truth in it. I think it's definitely still revivable, considering how we've only the measures that need to take place, such as improving equality in society and improving funding for ethnic minorities. They are achievable, but whether they're realistic is another matter, whether it will realistically be done. So I'm an optimist. I believe it's not dead, but I believe that when it's not when people are abusing it, or when the capitalist system is too raw, it can mean that it is essentially dead because it's not being used in the right way.
Okay.